4 years ago, 13-year-old Nicholas Hartwell vanished from Ocean City without a trace. The police searched for months. His family never gave up hope, and his case became one of the most heartbreaking, unsolved mysteries in our town's history. I'm Emma Richardson, and I thought the Hartwell case was closed forever. I was wrong. What happened when someone claiming to be Nicholas returned home would expose an international network of identity thieves, reveal the dark psychology of desperate families, and force me to uncover a truth so disturbing that I sometimes wish I'd never started digging. But the real Nicholas Hartwell deserved justice, even if his family wasn't ready to accept what that justice would cost them. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. "Miss Richardson, this is Patricia Hartwell. You handled my divorce 3 years ago." I remembered Patricia well, a broken woman trying to rebuild her life after her husband left when their son disappeared. "Patricia, how can I help you?" "Nicholas is back," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "My son came home yesterday. After 4 years, he just walked up to our front door. I should have been happy for her. Any parent's worst nightmare ending with their child's safe return should be cause for celebration. But something in Patricia's voice made me uneasy. "That's wonderful news, Patricia. Where has he been?" "He says he was kidnapped, taken to Spain. He escaped and made it back home." "Emma, I need your help with the legal aspects, getting his records updated, dealing with the police, maybe pursuing the kidnappers." "Of course, I'd be happy to help. When can we meet?" "Today, if possible." Nicholas is different. 4 years of trauma have changed him. He looks older, his accent is strange, and he doesn't remember some things. But it's him. It has to be him. That last sentence stuck with me. It has to be him. Not it is him, but it has to be him. There's a difference between certainty and desperate hope. I arrived at the Hartwell house that afternoon to find a media circus. News vans lined the street, reporters crowded the sidewalk, and neighbors gathered to catch a glimpse of the miracle return. The story had already hit the local news. Missing Ocean City boy returns home after 4 years. Inside the house, I met the young man claiming to be Nicholas Hartwell. He was 17 now, or at least appeared to be. Tall, dark-haired, with European features and a slight accent that Patricia explained as a result of his time in Spain. He seemed nervous, constantly looking around as if expecting someone to challenge his story. When I shook his hand and introduced myself, he said, "Thank you for helping my family, Miss Richardson. Mama told me you were very kind during the divorce, but Nicholas had disappeared before his parents' divorce. He wouldn't have known about my involvement unless Patricia had told him, recently. I filed that detail away for later. Nicholas, I'm so glad you're home safely. Can you tell me about what happened when you were taken?" His story was elaborate but vague. Kidnapped while walking home from school. Driven across the country, eventually taken to Spain where he was held by a family who forced him to work. He escaped 3 weeks ago and somehow made it back to Ocean City with help from various strangers. When I asked for specific details, names, locations, how he crossed international borders without documents, his answers became evasive. "It's hard to remember everything," he said. "The trauma, you know." Patricia hung on his every word, tears in her eyes. "My brave boy, what you've been through." That evening, I called Detective Sarah Kim, who had worked the original missing persons case. "Sarah, I need to ask you about Nicholas Hartwell. The kid who just came back?" "Yeah, I heard. Miracle story, right?" "Maybe. Do you still have his original case file?" "Of course. Why?" "I'd like to review it. Something feels off about this whole situation." "Emma, be careful. That family has been through hell. Don't go stirring up trouble unless you're sure there's something to find." But there was something to find. The original case file contained detailed information about Nicholas Hartwell that the young man currently living in Patricia's house either didn't know or got wrong. The real Nicholas had a distinctive birthmark on his left shoulder. When I casually asked Patricia about it during our next meeting, she made an excuse about how trauma can change physical appearance. The real Nicholas was allergic to shellfish, severely allergic. Patricia was preparing his favorite shrimp dinner to celebrate his return. The real Nicholas had broken his arm in 2nd grade, leaving a slight crook in his left elbow that showed up clearly in medical records. The young man claiming to be Nicholas had perfectly straight arms. Most telling of all, the real Nicholas was right-handed. The imposter was clearly left-handed, though he tried to hide it. I began my own investigation quietly, not wanting to shatter Patricia's fragile hope if I was wrong. But the more I dug, the more convinced I became that whoever this young man was, he wasn't Nicholas Hartwell. The question was, who was he, and why was he perpetrating this elaborate deception? I hired Jack Riley, my private investigator friend, to help me trace the imposter's real identity. "Emma, this is going to be delicate," Jack warned me. "If you're right, you're about to destroy this family's happiness. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" "The real Nicholas is still missing, Jack. His family deserves to know the truth, even if it hurts. And if the real Nicholas is dead, you'll be trading their false hope for confirmed grief." It was a sobering thought, but I couldn't let a lie continue, especially when it might prevent the truth about the real Nicholas from ever coming to light. Jack's investigation led us to some disturbing discoveries. The young man living with the Hartwells had been in the United States for only 6 weeks, entering the country illegally through the Mexican border. Before that, his trail led back to Eastern Europe. Emma, I think we're dealing with a professional, Jack told me during one of our meetings. This isn't some random kid who decided to pretend to be Nicholas. This is someone with experience in identity fraud. What do you mean? I found records of similar cases in Europe. Young men in their 20s claiming to be missing children, getting adopted by desperate families, then disappearing after a few months with their new family's life savings. The pieces were starting to come together. This was a con game, and Patricia Hartwell was the mark. But why had the imposter chosen Nicholas specifically? The answer came when Jack discovered that Nicholas's case had been featured in several international missing children databases. His photos, personal details, and family information were all publicly available to anyone who knew where to look. So this guy researches missing kids, picks one whose timeline works for his age, memorizes the basic details, and shows up claiming to be the missing child. I said, putting it all together. Exactly. And desperate families are usually so happy to have their child back that they overlook inconsistencies, at least for a while. How long before he disappears with their money? Based on the European cases, usually 2 to 3 months. Just long enough to gain complete trust and access to bank accounts. I realized I was running out of time. If I was going to expose the imposter, I needed to do it before he vanished, taking Patricia's savings and leaving her more devastated than before. But I also needed concrete proof, not just suspicions and circumstantial evidence. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Chen, a forensic psychologist I'd worked with before, agreed to meet with the imposter under the pretense of helping him deal with his trauma. What she discovered confirmed my worst fears. Emma, that young man has never experienced the kind of trauma he describes, she told me after their session. His psychological profile is completely inconsistent with someone who's been kidnapped and held against their will. What did you find? He's confident, manipulative, and shows signs of antisocial personality disorder. This isn't a victim, this is a predator. And there's something else. His accent isn't Spanish, it's Eastern European, probably Romanian or Bulgarian. Can you be sure? I speak Romanian. I caught several pronunciation patterns that are distinctly Balkan, not Iberian. Armed with this information, I decided to confront the imposter directly. But first, I needed to prepare Patricia for what was coming. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Patricia, I need to talk to you about Nicholas. What about him? He's doing so well, Emma. He's starting to remember more about his time before the kidnapping. That's what I need to discuss. Patricia, I've been investigating, and I don't think this young man is your son. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? Of course he's Nicholas. I'm his mother. I would know. Would you? It's been 4 years. He was 13 when he disappeared, just entering puberty. Boys change a lot during those years. Emma, stop. I know what you're trying to say, and I won't listen to it. Patricia, please, let me show you what I found. I laid out the evidence piece by piece. The missing birthmark, the food allergies, the broken arm that had healed perfectly straight, the change from right-handed to left-handed. With each point, Patricia's denial became more desperate. Trauma can change people, she insisted. The doctor said memory loss is common in kidnapping cases. What about his accent? You said he picked up Spanish in Spain, but Dr. Chen says it's Eastern European. You had him examined without my permission? Patricia, I'm trying to help you. This young man isn't your son, and he's planning to disappear with your money in a matter of weeks. Patricia asked me to leave. She chose to believe the comfortable lie over the painful truth. I understood her decision, but I couldn't let it stand. If this imposter was part of an international fraud ring, he needed to be stopped before he victimized other families. I took my evidence to Detective Kim and the FBI. The federal investigation moved quickly. Within a week, they had confirmed the imposter's real identity. Alexei Petrov, a 23-year-old Romanian national with a history of identity fraud across 3 countries. He had targeted at least 7 other families, stealing over $300,000 in the process. The confrontation happened at the Hartwell house on a quiet Thursday evening. FBI agents surrounded the property while Detective Kim and I went to the door. Patricia answered, her eyes red from crying. She knew what was coming. Mrs. Hartwell, we have a warrant for the arrest of the individual claiming to be your son, Nicholas, Detective Kim announced. Where is he? Upstairs, Patricia whispered. I told him you were coming. We found Alexei Petrov in Nicholas's bedroom, calmly packing a suitcase. He didn't seem surprised to see us. I suppose you figured it out, he said in accented English. Did you really think you could keep this charade going forever? I asked. He shrugged. I've done it before. Usually the families are so desperate they don't ask questions. How could you do this to a grieving mother? She wanted her son back. I gave her that happiness, even if it was temporary. Is a beautiful lie not better than an ugly truth? Not when it prevents the real truth from being found. As they led Alexei away in handcuffs, he turned to Patricia one last time. I'm sorry, he said. I never meant for it to go this far. The media coverage was brutal. Family duped by imposter, the headlines read. Missing boy still missing after cruel hoax. Patricia became an object of public ridicule. How could a mother not recognize her own son? The psychological toll was devastating. She retreated from public life, refusing interviews and avoiding contact with neighbors who had celebrated Nicholas's return. But the case wasn't over. With Alexei in custody, I convinced the FBI to reopen the investigation into the real Nicholas Hartwell's disappearance. If someone was using his identity for fraud, it might mean Nicholas was dead, but it also might provide new leads about what really happened to him. The fresh investigation yielded unexpected results. Using advanced technology that hadn't been available 4 years earlier, forensic specialists found DNA evidence that had been missed in the original case. A few drops of blood on a fence post near the school where Nicholas was last seen. The DNA didn't match Nicholas, but it was in the federal database. It belonged to Marcus Webb, a convicted child molester who had been released from prison just 6 months before Nicholas disappeared. Marcus Webb had been living in Ocean City under an assumed name, working as a maintenance worker for the school district. He had access to all the schools, including Nicholas's elementary school. When police went to arrest him, they found he had fled the area 3 years ago, but they also found something else in his abandoned apartment, Nicholas's backpack and school ID. The grim truth was becoming clear. Nicholas Hartwell hadn't been kidnapped and taken to Spain. He had been murdered by Marcus Webb, probably within hours of his disappearance. The international manhunt for Webb began immediately, but he had vanished without a trace. The case remained technically open, but everyone involved knew Nicholas was dead. I had to tell Patricia the truth. After months of false hope followed by public humiliation, she now had to face the confirmation of her worst fears. "I'm sorry, Patricia. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear." She was surprisingly calm. "I think I always knew he was dead," she said quietly. "The night he disappeared, I felt something break inside me. A mother knows." "Then why did you believe Alexei?" "Because I wanted to. Because living with false hope was easier than living with confirmed grief." "I understand. Do you? Do you really understand what it's like to lose a child and then have someone offer them back to you, even if deep down you know it's impossible?" I didn't have an answer for that. The Alexei Petrov case made national news and led to new protocols for verifying the identities of missing children who return home. Families are now required to undergo genetic testing and psychological evaluation before reunions are confirmed. It's a sad necessity, but one that might prevent other families from experiencing what Patricia went through. Alexei was eventually deported back to Romania after serving 18 months in federal prison. He gave authorities information about his criminal network that led to the arrest of 6 other identity fraudsters operating across Europe and North America. It was some small measure of justice, but it didn't bring Nicholas home. Marcus Webb was found 2 years later, living under another false identity in Mexico. He was extradited and eventually confessed to killing Nicholas, though he claimed it was accidental, that he had only intended to molest the boy, not kill him. He led police to Nicholas's remains, buried in a wooded area 30 miles outside Ocean City. Patricia finally got to bury her son. The funeral was small and private, attended only by close family and a few friends. The media had moved on to other stories, and the public had largely forgotten about the Hartwell case. But I was there along with Detective Kim and a few others who had worked to find the truth. "Thank you," Patricia told me after the service, "for not letting me live a lie. I'm sorry it took so long to find the real truth. 4 years, or 6 years, or 10 years, it doesn't matter. Nicholas was gone the day he disappeared. At least now I know for certain, and I can start to heal." The Nicholas Hartwell case taught me that sometimes the truth is more painful than lies, but it's still necessary. Families of missing children live in a special kind of hell, not knowing whether to hope or grieve, unable to move forward but afraid to give up. People like Alexei Petrov prey on that desperation, offering false hope while stealing not just money, but the precious emotional energy these families need to survive. It also showed me how sophisticated international crime has become. Identity fraud isn't just about stealing credit card numbers anymore. It's about stealing entire lives, entire identities, and entire futures. The internet makes it easier than ever for criminals to research their targets and craft convincing false narratives. Most importantly, it reminded me that my job as a lawyer isn't just to advocate for my clients, it's to seek truth and justice, even when that truth is painful, and that justice comes at a high personal cost. Patricia Hartwell deserved to know what really happened to her son, even if that knowledge brought more pain than comfort. Today, 3 years after Marcus Webb's conviction, Patricia has slowly begun to rebuild her life. She's become an advocate for missing children's families, helping them navigate the legal and emotional challenges of long-term disappearances. She works with law enforcement to develop better protocols for identity verification, and has helped expose 2 other cases of imposters claiming to be missing children. "I can't bring Nicholas back," she told me recently, "but maybe I can prevent other families from going through what I experienced, both the original loss and the cruel false hope. It's not the ending any of us wanted, but it's the one we got. And sometimes in cases like these, finding peace with an imperfect resolution is the best justice we can achieve." The real Nicholas Hartwell was 13 years old when he died. He never got to graduate high school, go to college, fall in love, or have children of his own. His life was cut short by a monster who saw him as nothing more than an object for his twisted desires. But Nicholas's story didn't end with his death. It continued through his mother's advocacy work, through the improved protocols his case inspired, and through the other children who might be saved because we learned from his tragedy. That's not the kind of justice you see in movies, clean, satisfying, and complete. But it's real justice, messy and imperfect and ongoing. It's the justice of remembrance, of learning from loss, and of making sure that even in death, Nicholas Hartwell's short life had meaning and purpose. As I write this account, I think about all the families still waiting for missing children to come home. I hope they never have to choose between false hope and painful truth. But if they do, I hope they'll choose truth. Because only in truth can real healing begin, and only in truth can justice, imperfect as it may be, finally be served.